Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion, which you might be able to see behind me. It's tropical houseplants. Today's video is going to be a bit different. Actually, both of this week's videos are going to be a bit different, where instead of me highlighting a specific plant, I'm going to talk about certain things that followers have actually requested, both on my Instagram and also subscribers on here. And that is a couple of things. Today's video, I want to talk about how to bring in plants that have maybe been outdoors, some of your tropical plants that have maybe summered outdoors, and what you need to do when bringing them into the house and back into the warmth, essentially, for the winter months. So I'll be picking up different things and showing you what I use in order to achieve this. So first thing on the list is obviously when you bring your plant in, make sure that you thoroughly check the growing media, so the soil or whatever you're growing that plant in, and make sure that there's no pests that you can obviously see within there, because obviously unlike the usual pests that you're used to having indoors, such as mealybugs, spider mites, thrips, anything like that, there's also a whole host of other types of pests that do exist outdoors. So you're looking at things like caterpillars, slugs, anything along those lines. Are things that you're not used to dealing with indoors, but they maybe have attached themselves to your indoor plants that were summering outdoors. So definitely make sure that you check on that, because even though most of those outdoor pests, dealing with them indoors can be a bit more straightforward, it's still a good idea to catch it early before you bring the plant in. So the second thing you want to do, even after you've checked for pests, and this is something that I do, you don't have to do it in this way, is make sure, and let me just pick something up, make sure that you spray your plants down. I usually at this stage don't like to add anything that's too chemical. I tend to go with a slightly more natural route. So what I do is my usual mix of neem oil, soap and warm water, and maybe just a dash of rubbing alcohol in it as well. Shake it all up. Spray the plant down entirely if possible. Let it air dry. Don't put it somewhere that's very, very humid, because it will take a long time and then you might run into the risk of mold. But spray it down, and that would mean that any pests that you might have not have seen will get attacked by the neem oil, essentially. Now, the next big thing that you should be doing when you're bringing your plants in that have been outdoors, even after you've checked for pests, even after you've sprayed the plant down, is isolate them if at all possible. It's very difficult with me because of the size of my collection and because of the sheer volume of plants on every possible surface of the house. It's very difficult for me to isolate the plants while still giving them a decent amount of light. But if you can, do try to isolate them for 2 to 3 weeks ideally. And then what I would normally do, just as a bit of a fail-safe, is at the end of the 2-week mark, I would probably respray again with the neem oil, just because, and hopefully this is something that you've learnt along the way, a lot of the indoor pests, at least, their life cycles tend to be roughly between 10 and 14 days. So potentially any of the adults that you might have blitzed whilst checking for the plant and whilst spraying it down with neem oil for the first time around, if they've laid any eggs or anything like that, the second spray down will usually help then target those smaller, kind of more larval stages as well. And hopefully by that point, you've got rid of the majority of the potential pests that might have been on the plant when it was outdoors. Now, that's also why I usually say 2 to 3 weeks, because generally speaking, for most of my plants, I'll try to do a 3-week reintroduction, essentially, because then it gives me a chance to spray when they first come in, spray again 2 weeks after, let it go for another week in the isolation area, and then potentially bring it into the bigger collection again. And then a few other things that you do need to be taking into consideration is light levels, if at all possible. I know you're going to be isolating your plant, but if at all possible, don't go and take a plant that's been outdoors and been getting loads of bright light, even if you've had it in a shady spot in your garden. That shady spot in your garden is probably more light than it was used to indoors in a bright indirect location. So you ideally want to bring that plant back into those slightly lower light situations that you get indoors a bit more gradually. So Don't go from a plant that was outdoors and in the shade of a plant straight into a low light situation. That will probably stress out the plant quite a bit. So if you can, try to stagger the plant back into more of its usual indoor lighting conditions. The other thing to remember, and I think probably wrapping up the video a bit with this one, this is probably going to be a bit of a quick video, is making sure that you pull back a bit on the watering. So when the plants are outdoors, even now when it's starting to get a bit cooler, because they're getting those higher light levels and because there's a lot more wind that's happening, there's a bit more fluctuation within the temperatures, you are probably watering them a bit more frequently than you would have done if they were indoors. But obviously remember that these plants are now coming back indoors. The plant will transpire, so they will lose water a lot slower. The light levels are lower. You probably don't get as much air circulation. I know you've probably noticed a couple of times in my videos the sheer volume of fans that I've got going around, which makes my life great when it comes to editing these videos, because even though the microphone has got a noise isolation, I still have to do that in editing as well. And that's why sometimes you might hear the volume level a bit lower on most of these videos, is because there's a lot of editing that goes in to remove the fan noise. And yeah, it's not an option within a conservatory for me to switch off the fan so I can film, because you would probably see me here melting in front of you. It is that warm and humid in this room. Now, coming back from the tangent, because you do know I like a good tangent. So yeah, just to recap what we were talking about before, when you bring in your plant, check for pests, spray it down, isolate it for 2 to 3 weeks, spray it again at a 2-week mark, making sure that the light levels are reduced slowly, and then bringing it back into the circulation and bringing it back into its usual indoor spot. Make sure that you are reducing the watering level appropriately for the reduction of air circulation, temperature, and also light levels as well. But I think that's everything I wanted to say. It's relatively straightforward. This is something that I did for the first time, I think last year or the year before, and I was a bit nervous about, not necessarily about taking the plants out, but bringing the plants back in. And this is what I did last year, and this is what I did again this year when I started bringing my plants in. And so far, touch wood, everything is going well. And in all fairness, a lot of these plants will actually enjoy summering outdoors. I was a bit more hesitant and a bit more do I, don't I the first time that I've done it. But this summer, for instance, I was just like, right, this is going outdoors. This is going outdoors as well. And this is going outdoors as well. And 9 times out of 10, most of the ones that went outdoors did well, because guess what? Most of the houseplants that we've got that are growing happily within our environment indoors are plants. They aren't meant to be grown indoors one way or another. They are meant to be grown outside. So as long as the temperature is similar to what they might be experiencing in the native habitat, then it's fine, basically. But just to give you an example of that, I don't know whether or not you might be able to see if the camera is picking this up. Behind me, I've got my Hoya linearis that will summer every summer outdoors after the first time that I did it. I think I've done another video on my care and the kind of improvements that I've seen on this. But just to give you an indication, this is now laden with peduncles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 fully bloomed peduncles. This happened last time I took it out. When I brought it back in September, it almost kickstarted it back into a blooming cycle. And it's a great thing to both see and smell, because I don't know if you knew this, but Hoya linearis, when it blooms, it has a slightly citrusy smell to it. But anyway, I've probably prattled on for a bit too long anyway. Hopefully you've enjoyed. If you've got any questions, comments, do drop them down below. I'd love to have that conversation with you. And yeah, hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.